Still with top stories then on Newsbreak. The one-state solution will end the ongoing crisis in Israel and Palestine. That's according to Rivonia Trialist and former Sizwe member Professor Denis Goldberg. He says despite being of Jewish descent, he fails to understand the logic behind forming two separate and independent states in the region. Goldberg, who will be speaking during the 8th International Israeli Apartheid Week, which begins today, he however cautions that the one-state solution will not stop the fighting immediately.
An end to a violence over it immediately, but I can see no other short-term possibility for a breakthrough, but it requires much more than that. It's hard to say to the oppressed Palestinian people whose land has been stolen that the one thing they have to avoid is seeking revenge. The trick in South Africa, if I can call it a trick, our Freedom Charter in 1955 and the solid politics of the whole liberation movement offered a place for all, oppressor and oppressed, of course, primarily the oppressed, but the oppressor was offered a future in this country, South Africa.
Do you find any merit in using the term apartheid, or is it merely to tug on the heartstrings?
No, it does tag on the heartstrings, of course. But it was very interesting that when the United Nations General Assembly declared the apartheid crime against humanity, it defined apartheid, yes, on the basis of what was happening in South Africa under apartheid, but made it much wider. Not exactly our laws, not exactly our practices, things similar to discrimination against people on grounds of race, of skin color, of social exclusion, special laws, constitutes the crime of apartheid. The State of Israel has innumerable laws, often concealed in various ways, in which Jews are favored, Palestinians are excluded. They are second-rate citizens, even though they sit in the parliament.
The Israeli government has chosen to counter the voice of Israeli Apartheid Week by launching its own PR effort in a way called Israel Peace Week.
Yeah.
They've aimed to show that the international movement that you've become part of is aiming to not build peace in Israel, but to ask for the international community to cut ties with Israel, to enforce boycotts and disinvestments and sanctions. Do you think that's a tactic that's going to work?
Oh, I'm sure that American government and British government, French government will support them, as they always have. So they will try very hard. But it's very interesting to see the State of Israel, for once, on the defensive and trying to defend themselves to ward off sanctions. And sanctions were very effective in the South African case, to isolate, to make it difficult to trade, not for them to be wiped out. They are people and have the right to live. At least half of Jewish Israelis, it is said, oppose their own government's policies.
That was Rivonia Trialist and former Sizwe member Professor Denis Goldberg. We were unable to get a response from the Israeli embassy in South Africa at the time of going to broadcast.